Nice to welcome Andrew Allison to the show. He's head of campaigns at the Popular Conservatism group and joins us to talk about what is going on with the Tories right now. Very good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. It's particularly apposite on the day that, actually at the moment, while Reform UK leader Nigel Farage is speaking, basically not just parking his tanks on Tories' lawn, as we've seen, but also on Labour's lawn as well, in terms of some of the policies. I just want to talk to you, first of all, just about the Tories signalling that they are ready to pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. This after 9 European leaders have basically criticised the ECHR for preventing the deportation of foreign criminals. We know this is a huge issue, the Rwanda policy and others, and the issue of illegal asylum seekers in the UK ahead of the last general election, a big factor in the Tories losing the election. It's going to be a big factor that's pulling down the Labour support as well, and a big boon for Reform UK. But is leaving the ECHR and this announcement that we're expected to see, is that going to be a game changer?
I don't know whether it'll be a game changer, Julia, but it is the right decision. From time to time, we've done about 8 or 9 of these. We do opinion panel surveys amongst PopCon supporters. And more than 85% of our supporters believe that the Conservatives should pledge to leave the ECHR and scrap the Human Rights Act. Yeah. And it's a pretty good barometer for Conservative grassroots opinion. So it certainly will be a popular move within the party. And of course, as the recent local elections have highlighted, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, of course, is losing support to Reform. Yeah. But the Conservative Party certainly needs to win back those previous Conservative voters who voted for Reform. Yeah. Now, whether they will do that with this policy, I doubt that they will, but it's going to have to be a whole raft of different policies as we head towards the next general election.
I mean, we've been discussing the ECHR and leaving that convention, leaving the European Court for Human Rights is also for so many years now. But the reality is we've now got such a politicised judiciary. I'm not sure that would make any difference anyway, because we're saying we have to leave because they keep using Article 8, the right to a family and private life, to keep people in the country because they're Albanian and their son doesn't like Albanian nuggets, or they're a paedophile, but they'll miss seeing their children, and their children will lose that because they're here. But the reality is actually these are just absurd misinterpretations. They're not different. They're misinterpretations of the articles of the Human Rights Convention. And if they went back to the how it used to be interpreted 20 or 30 years ago, we wouldn't have an issue.
No, that's correct, Julia, and there has to be wholesale reform of the way that we do things in this country. We tend to be run by quangos and by committees and by judges. I mean, my colleague Mark Littlewood, I think he said it to you once, that if you want to change immigration policy in this country, you're far better off becoming a judge than you are a cabinet minister.
Yes.
And he's completely correct in that. So that all of that has to change. And those people who say, well, if we pull out of the ECHR, we'll be like Russia or Belarus. Well, we're not like Russia or Belarus.
It's nonsense.
We've got a proud history of defending human rights.
By the way, Europe only has human rights because of us. You're welcome.
Well, precisely. And the ECHR was formulated immediately after the Second World War, which was a response to the genocide of the Second World War. Yeah. So times have moved on.
Can I just say what a pleasure it is to have someone use the word genocide correctly on my show. It's so unusual these days in the news, isn't it? Can I also talk to you about, I mean, look, the threat from Reform UK, Nigel Farage, he's talking about bringing in tax breaks for married couples, help them have more kids. We need to have more. I mean, I think there are other things that would work better. Build more houses is the number one thing that will solve every problem in this country. He's also talking about reinstating the winter fuel allowance for all pensioners. That would be a very popular policy with a lot of people, but also scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. Now, that doesn't seem to me to be a Nigel Farage-esque policy at all. I think they're insane to do that. I've yet to find any of my audience who think that's a good idea. Why do you think he's announcing that?
If you look back at the last local elections, which were a disaster for my party, the Conservative Party, but look at Durham, traditionally a Labour heartland where I was born and brought up, Labour were reduced to 4 seats out of 98 on Durham County Council. I mean, that is how low that Labour has fallen. And Nigel Farage and Reform are clearly trying to make a play for the left and for the right. Now, how successful they're going to be in doing that, time will only tell. But for every supporter that you may pick up on the left by announcing those policies,
you
are going to lose supporters from the right.
And they've got the same thing. And again, your party is the same thing. Like, you're trying to get those reform voters, you lose your Lib Demi side of things. And it isn't. We had a caller earlier saying, look, I've voted reform because I think it was Allison saying, he's moving left, and I voted reform because I wanted someone to the right of the current Conservative Party, which is basically the Lib Dems. Let me ask you about who might be a leader who could get those voters in. Kemi Badenoch, as he took over the party, the party's gone down in the polls, and we're looking at the Tories fourth in one of the latest YouGov polls, with reform out top, below the Lib Dems. You can think of anything more demeaning than that. There's been a lot of talk. The Daily Mail's obsessed with this, bringing Boris Johnson back. Oh, wouldn't he do amazingly? I don't know how he's got time between changing nappies, given he's on his, I think, 9th child that we're allowed to know about anyway, that he's now a father to. And congratulations to him and Carrie. I'm all in favour of people having more babies who can afford them. He doesn't need a benefit cap for him. But Conservative MPs have basically said, no, there is no appetite to bring Boris Johnson back. Thank you very much. Do you agree?
Yes, frankly. If you look at some of the major issues that we face today, and net migration is one of them. Sure, the figures came down to, I think, 433,000. Yep. It was announced last week, which incidentally is still around about 100,000 higher than it was when we had the referendum to leave the EU. Yep. And that was regarded as too high then. But if you look at the time when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, the figures just rose exponentially. Yeah. And if you also look at net zero,
the Boris boom, I believe, yeah. Boris wave, the Boris wave of legal
Boris wave,
migrants.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes, wave of migrants. But also, if you look at net zero, which is another policy that is unpopular amongst those who are right of centre, Conservative voters, reform
people who can
voters.
Count.
People who can count as well, Julie. That's a very good point. But if you look at that particular policy, who was the major champion of it? And that was Boris Johnson. I think Boris Johnson, the idea that he's somehow or other the exiled king across the water, waiting to return to claim his throne, is for the birds, and I can't see that happening at all.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Andrew Allison, Head of Campaigns at Popular Conservatism, thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Tom Slater, the ECHR, Boris Johnson returning, has he answered the Tory woes?
Well, it does show what a hole that they're in at the moment. I mean, if
scrabbling around,
if Boris Johnson is the answer, you're probably asking the wrong question. At the very least, they haven't been able to move on. I mean, any possible benefit he might bring because of the charisma, the cut through, the fact that there's still a portion of society who've got warm things to say about him.
There are three party leaders on for the Tories since Boris. That's how many there have been.
Any benefit he might bring would obviously be cancelled out by the tremendous negative that he would also represent because of lockdown, because of Partygate, because of all these different things, because of immigration. So I think this is a party which is completely run out of ideas, and so is revisiting some failed ideas that they've gone to in the past.
Do you think the problem is Kemi Badenoch, or is the problem the party? She keeps making the point that, look, voters are still angry with us. Nigel Farage this morning has said in his speech that people won't trust the Tories again.
I think who is the leader of the Conservative Party at this point is almost totally, irrelevant. It could be Mr. Blobby, and it would make absolutely no difference one way or the other. The idea that if it was Robert Jenrick who was chosen last year rather than Kemi Badenoch, that he would have cut through to such a significant degree, I just don't buy it. And I think that people pay too much attention sometimes to the kind of internal ideological battles within the Tory party rather than where the public are at, which is that they see the Tory party as kind of half kind of busted flush, but also people who have been in power for a long time, pledged to do things and then did the precise opposite. And a change of the leadership isn't necessarily going to overcome that anytime soon, I don't think. Yeah,
indeed. When we saw, after the Labour Party got in 97, it was just change of leader after change of leader. I think every summer I did as a political editor yet another leadership election. I think we may be in that territory again. We shall wait and see. Love to hear your thoughts on that.